Question we're starting with is what makes Laravel so special? And sometimes we can ask this question from a positive way of what makes it so special and why are we so excited about it, and sometimes it's a negative, what makes you so special? And so we're going to be kind of poking at it from each of those different ways. So I love this quote. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, because what it kind of points out to us is that a lot of times when people are looking at things that they don't understand, they look at it and say, well, it must have some other explanation. If you think about people from ages ago when they didn't understand why the sun rose and went down, or why the earth turned around or whatever else, they would come up with reasons, and that's where a lot of the myths came from, right? It's, we don't understand it, so we're going to attribute it to ogres or monsters or whatever else, but that's kind of at play in our world today as well. And a lot of times when people say, well, what makes Laravel so special? What they mean is, what makes it so magical? And once again, that can be positive and that could be negative, right? It can be positive because it's magical and we love it and there's fairies and sprinkles and happiness, but sometimes they mean, I don't get it, right? I wrote a better framework than Laravel, and Laravel's seen more success than me, so why is Laravel so successful, right? And so I think it's helpful for us to interrogate why is Laravel so magical in both the positive and the negative ways. So if you're thinking about magic and you're thinking about Laravel, you have three things you're going to talk about. I'll get two out of the way and talk about the one that this talk is actually about. So the first one is obviously the Laravel Magic Twitter user, which you've never experienced before, is a ton of joy and fun, primarily because this user is very interested in interrogating who Tyler Otwell is, who's the actual true original creator of Laravel. And apparently, Taylor has just been masquerading while his twin brother actually created it. So go check out the Laravel Magic Twitter user for that. But that's not it for today. Right? That's our good laugh when we move on. The next thing is coding magic. And if you've been around long enough, you've heard the criticisms of Laravel that talk about, oh, well, everything's magical, right? And if you just Google Laravel magic, because you knew I was giving a talk about it and you're curious about it, all the answers would be people being critical. I'm leaving the magic of Laravel. Laravel has too much magic. Laravel 5 came out. No, it's so magical and I don't want to work with it anymore. And usually what they're talking about in these spaces is, just like magic, Laravel does something, and I don't really know how it works. And sometimes that's because the person needs to take the time to understand it, but sometimes they're being reasonably critical, and they're saying the average developer doesn't understand why it works that way. And that's bad, because the average developer should understand what's under the hood, and it's the same criticisms that were thrown at jQuery, right? You got a whole bunch of people using the thing, they don't actually know how it works, so when it breaks, they're totally stuck because they're relying on the magic. I think that's actually not a problem for reasons we'll talk about in a second, but I also want to say that when I talk about Laravel magic, that's not my primary point today. So the third one is sold-out PlayStation Theater magic. And I think that when people talk about the magic of Laravel, that's what they mean. Why are there 900 people there, right here in front of us? Why is it such a big deal? Why has it been seeing this meteoric rise when a lot of the other PHP and backend frameworks haven't been seeing that same level of success? Why is it such a big deal? And so I think that when somebody asks these questions, what they really mean is, in Comic Sans, what makes Laravel sell out the PlayStation Theater? Funny story, I make my slides and then I pass them off to our designer, Noemi, so she makes them look good. And she's like, well, this was obviously a mistake, so I'll fix it. I'm like, no, keep it that way. I did it on purpose. So I have a few thoughts about what that looks like, but I think the simplest and most important answer, although you're going to make fun of me because this is so, idealistic or whatever, is because I think that Laravel is changing people's lives. And I'm glad I'm going last because I was able to hear so many conversations happen from stage and also in the hall when people are talking about Laravel changing people's lives. And Justin, who is one of my favorite people to hear talk about it, both because he's hilarious and brilliant, but also because he came to Laravel from the outside, he has a perspective on Laravel that a lot of us don't. And he frequently tells the story to people outside of the Laravel space about when he first came and he talked to someone who had previously been a realtor and changed their lives around and all this kind of stuff. You've heard that story, and you've heard that story for so many other people where their lives are different. So I was going to put together a couple slides here about the ways in which I know that people's lives are being changed by Laravel, and I was going to pull a couple friends' stories and things I've heard, but I thought, you know what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to ask on Twitter. So I went on Twitter, and I asked a question, Twitter break, and I said, in what way has working with Laravel PHP changed your life for the better? So quite a few of the responses were trolly. Most of them were funny. Some of them were annoying, and I sent the eye-rolling emoji at them. And one guy, I just wrote the word, the letters LOL, and he's like, LOL back. And I'm like, LOL back at you. It's like LOL Pong. What are we actually doing here? Why are we actually interacting with each other? But that's fine. So I got some really great responses, and some of them fit into these pre-made ideas I had about ways in which people's lives had been changed by Laravel that I was planning to do originally anyway, right? And so I kind of made these slides and then fit them in. Some of them didn't, and some of my favorite things about the responses about that is they weren't all the same, and I learned a lot about people and how they use Laravel by reading these responses. So I would actually recommend go find this tweet. It's one of my most recent tweets, and go look at the responses there, because I'm not going to cover all of it, and a lot of it is really good. But let's take a look at just a couple of these. So I think the simplest one is someone whose life opportunities were transformed. And I think this is actually the most important. I'm starting the most important, which is I could not do something before, or I didn't have this opportunity before, and now I do because of the opportunities provided me by Laravel. And this is just a couple of them. You can look at them. I'll put these slides online later, so you can take pictures and try to read these really quickly, but don't worry about it. I'll link them all on Twitter once I get a minute to do it backstage. But just all these saved me from burning out and quitting engineering all together. I went from making 18K a year to working 80 a year working for US companies. Helped me make me a published author, and quite a few people are here. Martin, I know that you're here. So these people are having opportunities in their lives that, unlike other technical frameworks or technical tools that they worked with, did not give them that opportunity, and they're getting this opportunity with Laravel. And that is something significant, and people relate to something that changes their life or gives them opportunity for their lives to be changed differently than something that might have, better single responsibility principle. And so we're having different values that we can think about what Laravel is providing versus other things. And the simpler one, it's not quite as influential, but as programmers we care about this, is a lot of us used PHP for a while, and if you hear a lot of Rubyists and Pythonists and other folks criticize PHP, it's because they used it, and then they left right before PHP 5.3 and OOP came out, and so they look at it and they say it's terrible. And a lot of us were in that space, not everyone, but a lot of us in that space as well, and we were on our way out. Right? We had learned through WordPress, we had learned through vanilla PHP, we learned through Magento, whatever else, and we said, okay, I'm ready to do kind of grown-up programming, right? And it wasn't there for us. And Laravel and Composer and OOP of PHP 5.3, all these things gave us a space to say, no, I can grow as a programmer and still stay in this space where I've got a job and I know the tech stack and I have maybe other reasons why I really like PHP. And I had quite a few people give these things as well. Re-switched from Python back to PHP because Laravel. It made me not hate PHP for once. Let me abandon Ruby on Rails and come back to PHP. And there's reasons to use PHP, but there was reasons to leave, and I think Laravel got rid of a lot of those reasons to leave and made a lot of reasons to actually join it in the first place. And there's quite a few people whose businesses were entirely possible as a result of Laravel. Now, granted, you say, well, why didn't you just use some other, RAD or full stack or MVC, whatever it's going to be? And that is sometimes possible, but if you look at the answers people gave here, that's not always the case. Things like, let's see, where's this really good one here where, anyway, I won't find a particular one, but quite a few people said things like, because I can work so fast with it and trust it, I can focus more on my business, right? Or because I can work so quickly with it, I can build multiple things that I wouldn't have had the time to do because I still had to work a full-time job while I started doing my side projects. All these different answers that show that the specific things that Laravel allowed people to do things they couldn't have done otherwise. And you have a story, right? There's a reason you're here. There's a reason you've been here for 2 days and you didn't leave, even though you've been here for 48 hours at this point and you're probably tired and hungry, but somehow you stuck around. You paid the money for it, or your boss paid the money for it, or your spouse paid the money for it, or something. You skipped work for a couple days. And yes, New York is really wonderful, and yes, there's other values here. The coffee's good and the lunch was good and stuff like that, but you're here for a reason, right? And that story, each of you, there's similarities, but there's some reason why you're here, and there's some reason you're here and not the conference for some other thing. And so each of us have these stories. And even Taylor has a story, right? Like if you imagine Taylor's life, if you've listened to any of the interviews with him where he talked about what he was doing coming out of college, he almost didn't even do tech because he couldn't find a job. And he's like, yeah, I might have just ended up working in a car garage, which is fine, but he would have a very different life. And then he worked for that one company, and then he started Laravel, and he got hired by HelpSpot. Working for HelpSpot is not the same as working for that company he was before. And then he went out on his own, and then he traveled around the world, and he spoke on huge stages, and he's able to give his family a different life than he would have otherwise. So he has the same kind of thing where his life is different. So if we recognize that Laravel is changing people's lives, your life, my life, plenty of people in the tweets' lives, Taylor's lives, we can understand that that's a valuable thing. That's a very good thing, and that's something that attaches us to Laravel and allows us to want it. But there's some things we can take from there. We can go in multiple directions, and I'll go in multiple directions in just a second. If you've heard me give a talk before, you very likely heard me reference the 5 whys. And it's a Six Sigma engineering concept where if you have a problem, you don't just ask why. You say, well, why is that? And they give you an answer. And you say, why is that? And they give you an answer. And you say, why is that? And you keep asking that 5 times until you hopefully have gotten to the actual source of the problem. I'm not going to do that this time, although I have in previous talks, but I do want to at least take this one step further. Okay, Laravel is magical because it's changing people's lives. Why? And I don't think I have all the answers. I tried really hard to get all the answers for this talk, and I realized I had to give up on that and just try to get some of the answers. Some of these answers we've talked about a million times. I wrote them in my book, we talked about it on a podcast, and I think some of these I was able to uniquely think about having had the opportunities to be as involved in the Laravel community with Taylor and podcasting, books, and interviews and stuff like that. And so hopefully this is going to be something interesting for us. So my because starts here. Thank you very much. This may or may not be procrastination fodder, where I just didn't, I needed a moment away, and so I just kind of went and played in Photoshop for a while. Wow, dead remote means I can't wander. That is a bummer. Oh, wait, yay, there we go. Okay, cool. So here are 5, and I don't think it's the only 5, but I think these are 5 important reasons why Laravel is changing people's lives. So, community is the biggest one. I could give a 30-minute talk on community in Laravel all day long, but I don't have 30 minutes. The docs. We've talked a little bit about this. I'll talk a tiny bit about this, but the Laravel docs are so key, especially to its early adoption, but even to our experience with it today. Developer happiness, which you've probably heard about. Developer growth, which we seldom talk about. And then vision, which I don't know if we talk about that often. So I'm going to try and skim through these. Again, just community alone could be a whole talk, but I don't have time for that. So community. There's a few foundational pieces of the community that I think are very important. And I think there's a lot of other ones I just don't have time for today. But you can imagine our community and how impactful it is. So belonging. A good community helps you to belong. And if you've heard Taylor on podcasts over the years, you've heard him talk about this all the time. And there's a recent one he did with Justin where he talked about it, but this is, I think, one of the older ones where he said, from the very beginning of Laravel, I've had this idea that all people want to feel like they are a part of something. It's a natural human instinct to want to belong and be accepted into a group of other like-minded people. So by injecting personality in a web framework, being really active in the community, that type of feeling can grow in the community. So there's at least 2 things we can get from this. First of all, it is a very intentional, foundational aspect and concept in Laravel that you should be made to feel like you belong somewhere. And that has informed how we interact with each other. That's informed how this conference is run. That has informed how features are developed. That has informed how docs are developed. And those things have an impact, and I hope continue to have an impact. But additionally, what this can tell us is that Taylor's been thinking about that since the beginning. And often when someone can look at it from the outside and say, oh, why is it so successful? Technical. Well, you're probably missing the point, right? I think Laravel is a fantastic technical tool. I also think it's a fantastic community, environment, space. And it's not just a technical tool that does that. And I think we need to know that so we can understand what we have and we can continue to replicate it as we get bigger and bigger. That has foundationally, as a part of it, also kindness. I gave a talk about empathy a couple years ago at Laracon EU, and it's a kind of very similar concept here. When I put up that tweet the other day, one of my friends, Christopher, said, everyone in the community follows the Bill and Ted rule of, be excellent to each other. And I think that's also an aspect of it. Many of the other aspects I'm going to talk about later in this talk have to do with caring for the people around you, empathy and kindness. And I think that being a foundational part of our community is really significant in why more people want to grow it and people who are in it really feel like their lives are different as a result of it. And that leads to a teaching and sharing community. So we've got Stack Overflow, blogs, video courses, all this kind of stuff, Twitch streaming, GitHub, IRC, Slack, Discord. This is a community of people who always are trying to one-up each other and how much they can teach each other. Now, I want to be very direct. Sometimes it's because when you help people really well, you can eventually charge money for the book that you do as a result of that. And that's fine. It's okay to make money as a result of it. But I think there's 2 angles we can take from it. One of which is, I want to make money and I guess I can help people as a result, as a part of doing it. Or I want to help people and wow, I can actually turn that into my career, right? And I think that what we have foundationally here is a lot of people who help each other all the time. And I think that is a really significant aspect and a value of our community that I think is really key. It's open source, which we can't really underplay. I mean, we have people contributing to the core itself. We've got, Laravel, GitHub/Laravel/ideas, where people are just throwing out ideas they have. We've got tons of issues, tons of pull requests to the framework. Packalist, I don't use all the time, but the good thing about it is it's like packages, but scoped down to things that are connected to Laravel. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of people who are targeting either Laravel or Laravel adjacent PHP with their packages, with their free time. And that is incredible what you can do there versus relying on one company top down to do all that work for you. Again, community, giving back to each other. Nobody has to do that open source work, right? Everyone could technically and ethically and legally just take and take and take from the Laravel community and not give it back. But that's not the reality that we have. Inclusivity. I think this is both something we have really well, and I also hope we have opportunities to grow in. I don't have the number of countries, but I do know that we have dozens of countries that have very strong presences in the Laravel space, and likely quite a few more than dozens that actually have people actively doing Laravel development. We have all sorts of different languages. We've got Laravel Live Indias and meetups, Laravel Live UK. We've got, and one of the things I think is really cool is that we have a space in which you're welcome regardless of what you're coming from. And so we as PHP developers are usually, and many of us JavaScript developers, are used to being derided and looked down on, right? Oh, you're a PHP developer. Okay, you know, pat on the head or something like that. And what I think I've realized is that's not present in our community. I can't tell you the last time I walked in here and heard someone say, oh, you do WordPress. No, because most of us used to write WordPress. Plenty of us still write WordPress. We are using WordPress on 2 of our projects that we just installed within the last year, and it's good, and it's fine, and it's okay. We're not judging each other. And plenty of us use jQuery, and plenty of us use vanilla JavaScript, and plenty of us don't feel comfortable with JavaScript yet, and that's just fine. And I think that's really noticeable. It's some of the most inclusive communities in the world that are doing really well in terms of areas of diversity, which I think we can all work to grow in. Some of them are still not very welcoming. Quite a few of them are in languages where if a PHP developer walked in, they would look down on you. And so I think that if there's something really valuable about the fact that we as a community don't look down on a developer because of their current capacity or where they came from. And that is very significant, and that's very impactful, and I want us to continue doing those things. Thank you. And I think there's a really cool sign about that as well, which is that within our community, we have at least 2 big, broad channels, one of which is rapid application development, just do it, no type hints, all that kind of stuff. And then we've also got the CQRS, DDD, event sourcing, architecture all day long. And both of those are present in our community, and neither of them are the right way or the wrong way within our community. We have an active and healthy conversation between at least those 2 sides and plenty of others, React versus Vue or whatever else, or front-end versus back-end, and those are all there and they're all present. And the CQRS people are no less Laravel developers than the RAD people are the other way around, and that's perfectly fine and good. All right, next one is the docs. I think this gets talked about a lot, so I'm just going to read a couple quotes and point to it, but I do want to just make sure that we all know that the docs that we have, both in our framework and then for our external tooling, is actually really significant because usually it is the first interaction somebody has with our framework, with our community. Because they don't come to a Laracon first, they don't use our packages first. The first thing they do is they'll go to laravel.com or github.com/Laravel and they look at the docs. And so that's a huge entry point, and a lot of people, if they hit those docs and they weren't welcoming and understandable, they wouldn't ever get anywhere else, and these docs are really influential. Taylor, interview with Justin Jackson. I really feel like whoever, and he's talking about back when he started it, I really feel like whoever has the best documentation is going to win. Whoever's the most accessible and approachable is going to win. That's why WordPress is so hugely popular. Adam, if you've ever followed him on Twitter, almost always, any given month, you're going to find him saying, I found some new framework or something, and their docs are awful, and I don't know how to use it, and WTF, what's actually going on here? And if you ever watch me live stream, I'm like, oh, I have this really cool idea, and look, there's a package for it, and the docs don't make it clear how to do it. Screw it. I'm not going to waste 3 hours to understand how to use their package. I'm going to write it myself in 20 minutes, right? So that's like the opposite side of it. So the docs really have a huge and significant relationship to our engagement with any given framework or community, and it's something we shouldn't underplay. And then next, developer happiness. So if you've been around for a while, developer happiness from download to deploy was actually one of the original kind of like unofficial slogans that was used on the website, and the doc said, happy developers make the best code, and Taylor in his interview with Justin said, the easiest solution wins. So what our day-to-day life as developers is like can be impacted greatly by the tooling we're in. It can be impacted by our coworkers, by our bosses, all kind of stuff, but our tooling is one of the more significant pieces of that. And the fact that our tooling that we're using here thinks about what it would be like for me to start using this new piece of the tool I've never used before, and not only make it so it's relatively easy for me to understand, but maybe even easy for me to guess what the method name is. I mean, how many times have you been using something in Laravel and you're just kind of like, I think it would probably just be send, and you hit send and it actually just works, and you're like, yes. That's developer happiness. It's thinking about what our daily experience is like using this tool. And that's why things like Vapor and all that kind of stuff they exist and they're wonderful. Is because Taylor and other folks, Jeffrey and Adam, who are also building some of these tools, say, you know what, I'm really annoyed by this. I think Taylor or Adam recently mentioned the fact that, that Taylor and Adam both have really low pain tolerances. And so that's why they keep building these tools, because they'll be sitting together and I'm like, I'm really annoyed with how hard it is to host my site locally, and then they end up with Valet or something like that. Making our lives easier is very significant because it makes the next person's life easier, and that makes it easy for them to learn how to be a developer. And you'll see that a lot of the ways I'm going here are not just about us here, but about how the values we've gotten can be given to the other people around us. And then I think the last one is developer growth. It's not the last. I keep thinking it's the last. Developer growth. So this is one that I don't think we talk about that often, and I think we should. A lot of the criticisms levied at the Laravel community and the Laravel framework are that it is too easy. And we say, well, what does too easy mean, right? Why is it too easy? And what they usually mean is, yeah, it's really easy for new developers to use, but then they stay there. It keeps them there, right? Yeah, facades make things easier, but then are they testable? Do you use dependency injection? Blah, 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 blah. One of the really important things that I've learned about Laravel in the past few years is that it's easy to use. And recently, I've already started to really realize that while it is easy to use, it is also very easy to do more advanced things. Nobody's forcing you to use facades when you want to use dependency injection. And I realized this when I saw a lot of my more CQRS, DDD, event sourcing friends still stay in Laravel, right? They're doing way more advanced things. They might be really critical of some of the simpler things, and yet they keep using Laravel. And they made me realize that there is still space to do the most complex stuff you want and still find that this is the most effective space for you to be in. And that started making me ask these questions. But as I put this thing up on Twitter, I realized a third thing. So yes, it's really easy, and yes, you can do complicated things, but person after person after person after person responded and said, I learned to become a better developer by using Laravel. It's not just making it easy for you to enter when you're not a great developer. It's not just making it easy for you to do complicated things. It's teaching you. You have to learn about queues eventually. You learn about containers eventually. You learn about dependency injection eventually. You learn about unit testing eventually. You learn about DevOps eventually because it's just a part of what we do, but you don't have to know them all to start using it. And so you enter easily, you grow, and you still stay in the same space even as you have greater needs or enterprise scale or whatever else ends up being. And I think that's really significant. Easy entry, growth, stay there as you're getting better. That's really powerful, and that's one of the significant things. And I think finally, vision. I think that Taylor had a vision for creating this community. He had a vision for the docs. He had a vision for new technologies, and he continues to have vision for new things. I mean, Vapor is relatively unique in the world, and it takes a vision to understand what could be in order to do that. So that's the basic question of how has it been so magical for the last 8 years. And when Taylor and I were talking about what the best talk for me to give is, we're talking about, well, we're moving over to Laravel 6, and we're moving to Semver, and it's been 8 years and stuff like that. What does it look like? What has it looked like, but what do the next 8 years look like? So I think the simplest answer to that is keep doing the same things we've been doing this whole time. And I want to talk about that really briefly. Sorry, I keep losing my mic. With the community, I think that even the healthiest community can eventually have things happen to it where it becomes less healthy. And there's various sources of unhealthy community and a healthy community shifting to be unhealthy. One of them is, as people get roles of prominence, they then want to hold on to it. And what used to be free and open and flexible becomes locked down because people don't want to be threatened. And one of the things I think has been the coolest over the last few years of seeing the Laravel community is I've thought about, well, who have my mentors been and who have been the people who led the way and who taught me in the early days. Many of those people aren't the people on stage right now. They're not the prominent and well-known people. And you could see that as a downside, right? Those people left. But what really happened was they said, you know what, it's time for somebody else to shine. And I think that's really powerful and really significant that we have space for people to have the opportunity to shine and have the opportunity to teach, but not entrench their own position or entrench their own leadership in such a way where there's not space for new blood. So if you find yourself in a place where you do have some prominence, and you do have some position, that's an opportunity for you to then share that opportunity with somebody else. So, for example, one of the things I've decided I'm going to try to do recently is identify up-and-coming speakers so that when somebody asks me to speak somewhere and I can't, I say, but yeah, why don't you ask this person? Each of you has some opportunity to do something like that. What does it look like for you to not entrench your power, entrench your privilege, but find space to allow more and more people to come up and have these opportunities as they come up? And I think that additionally we can have cliques and that kind of stuff. And so continuing to go into spaces where we're not anymore, to not just hang out in our cool spot or our cool room or our cool whatever else, but go to the places where the newbies are, go into Discord or go into Stack Overflow, whatever else it is, and find the new people, the people you don't have those relationships, the people who aren't popular and well-known at this point, and help them come up and help them come in and be welcoming. Or one of our Titanites, I don't want to say their name because I think it may be embarrassed, has been sitting at our booth and just looking for whoever's alone out in the main thing, and then she'll just walk over to those people and talk to them and make friends with them. That's amazing. I love that. And I want us to be the type of community that does that, that watches out for the people who were where we used to be and give them the opportunity to enter in as well. The docs, I think that's relatively simple. I've mentioned in podcasts and stuff before, I've asked Taylor, and he says every couple of years I'll go back to the docs and I'll try to enter it with a new mind. What does it look like for me to enter this as if I don't know any of this stuff, and what's hard? So I think for each of you individually, what your contribution to the docs looks like is when you make your own stuff, make great docs. This is the simplest thing. Try to imagine being somebody who doesn't understand this at all. But also when you find yourself either learning or helping somebody else learn, and you notice that the resources that are available to us, whether it's docs or training resources, whatever else, aren't fully making it easy for you, take that as an opportunity to stop and pause and make it better for the next person. That's just, if we all take that responsibility on ourselves, it's not just always on Taylor to do that, right? In terms of developer happiness, again, we should all learn from Taylor. One of my favorite things in working with Titan has been when I talk with a developer who's never written an SDK before, they say, well, where do we get started? I was like, let's do what Taylor taught me to do, which is start with the API I, as a developer, would like to work with, and then work backwards from there. Oh, well, this API is terrible because the caching is bad and we have to write these really weird encoded SQL queries. That's okay, that's okay. Let's write what we want to use and take the steps it gets to make the code that we want to write and we want to interact with and we want to debug and we want to have to read over when something goes wrong down the road. Let's write that and then take the steps to go back there. Because that's exactly what Laravel is, right? It's just writing the API that you want to experience and then doing whatever work it takes to get that to actually function based on what's the underpinning layer. So do that in your APIs, do that in your SDKs, do that in your packages. We can be inspired by Laravel, but hopefully we can also be giving back packages that have that same, same way of working with it. Oops, sorry. Developer growth. Same thing I was saying here. When you have things that you feel like you are more advanced than the rest of the community or something like that, great, go teach it. Right? If you have something and you say, oh, well, Laravel's terrible because they're using this, that, great, teach this new thing you have to learn. And one of the things I love about some of the older folks who aren't quite as prominent now, for example, Sean McCool is really, really big in Europe, but he used to lead the Laravel podcast. And what he does is still stays in the Laravel community and still keeps teaching about all this wild stuff that I basically will never use in any project ever, but I'm glad because some people really need it. And he's just continuing to say, hey, I learned this new thing, check it out. Hey, I learned this new thing, check it out. And I love it when people do that. They learn out these new things and they say, hey, it might not work, it might take off, it might not take off, but hey, I learned it and I want you to see it, right? And let's all become people like that are trying to share these new things we know with each other. And finally, vision. I may have put a tweet about this. No, I didn't put a tweet. I think the tweet might be later. But Taylor put a tweet. He said, I don't know if I'm going to use Livewire or not, but I love that Caleb did this thing. And I totally agree. Before he even said a tweet about it, I was going to say the same thing. As whether or not you're going to use Livewire, the fact that Caleb sees this thing that was going on in the Phoenix community and says, I bet you we can do that in Laravel. I want more of that, right? The fact that Taylor sees serverless and says, well, nobody's doing PHP and serverless, so obviously it's not going to happen. No, he says, I'm going to make it happen. Because multiple times someone has said to me, is serverless the future? And I'm like, it's not my future. I don't know how, unless I'm writing a whole bunch of JavaScript. And what Taylor said was, I have the vision that those things are going to connect. Right? And so let us all have vision, not just to sit where we are, but also to contribute back and to learn from other places and to just, if you look at the origin story of Laravel, it's like, yeah, .NET MVC, Sinatra, Rails, all that kind of stuff, brought all these things together into the PHP world, and CodeIgniter and WordPress, and that's the best one. But that shouldn't be the last time that those spaces have anything to offer us. And hopefully we're offering to them as well, right? But that's not the last time that we should be learning from spaces outside of us. I think we should also try some new things. Oh, this is, see, I need to practice my talk more. Keep up with new trends. So that's what I was talking about, where with live view and stuff like that, where we're looking at what other people are doing. But we also want to innovate. We don't want to just look at what other people are doing. We also want to be people to whom others are looking to see what we're doing. And I think Vapor is one opportunity of that. But we don't have to just say, oh, we're going to copy that thing that Rails did 5 years ago or that thing that Phoenix is doing right now. We can also be the one where they're looking at us and saying, oh, man, they're handling, and this has happened a couple times, right? They're handling queues in a way that is really unique. Okay, cool. They're handling broadcast pusher events in a way that's really unique. Great. Let's be not just copiers that are doing a good job of learning from each other, but also innovating. Listen to new blood. I mentioned this before. I really want us to be a space where we don't just get entrenched with a power elite who is the only people that ever speaks, the only people that ever writes, the only people that ever get their tweets retweeted. Let's try to learn from other spaces. And finally, ease the on-ramp to Laravel developer. See, this is where I put them. I put them in the wrong spot. Ease the on-ramp to Laravel developership. I'll talk about it in a second. But I love these ones. Okay, so first one. With Vapor, I want people to be proud of PHP. This is the first serverless, blah, blah, blah. I want people to be proud of PHP. When have you heard anybody say that? And I'm telling you, so Dan and I, my business partner Dan and I, we are often making the case to businesses about Laravel. And what is really common is that we go with a developer, a CTO or a lead developer who wants their company to use Laravel, and we go with them to help make that case. So we have gotten relatively experienced about the opportunity of saying, why Laravel to people? I wrote, the intro to my book is literally titled, Why Laravel? And we go to all these companies, we say it. And answering the question, not just why Laravel, but why PHP, has been very interesting. And it's relatively easy for us to answer it in a very, I don't know the right word, but very concrete and not very romantic way, where we say, well, you know, the PHP has all these vanilla PHP and WordPress developers that are coming up. It's on every server. You know, there's some very practical but not romantic ideas for why you like PHP. But what I'm really interested in is the idea that, is it possible that we're not just, oh yeah, well there's more of us, oh yeah, we're on more servers, but is it possible where we actually can be a force as the Laravel community making PHP better, such that every day we can be prouder and prouder, not just of being Laravel developers, but actually being PHP developers? That's going to be an interesting challenge. It requires at least some of us to be working on the core team, at least some of us to learn C or all that kind of stuff that I don't know because I came from the front end, and understanding how you write PHP modules and all that kind of stuff. And so I saw Justin wearing that shirt, and I did like a double take, because at first I was like, well, yeah, okay, but I like it, right? That shirt, that thing right there, the idea that we don't just love Laravel and wish we could all, you know, have Laravel on Ruby or something like that, but the fact that the idea that we actually like PHP is something that's kind of foreign, kind of wild. But imagine the transformation it can make if we weren't just proud of being Laravel developers, but we could also be proud of being PHP developers. And I hope we should be. I don't think any of us should be ashamed for writing PHP. But I do think that there's an interesting challenge for us to look for what does it look like for us to help every day more and more be the case that PHP is something we're proud to write. And then, like I said earlier, this reference where Taylor said, use it or not, Caleb's Livewire is the kind of outside-of-the-box thinking I love about Laravel people. I want us to continue being those sorts of people. I'm dying on this mic. Sorry, everybody. All right. So the last point on my try some new things one was ease the on-ramp to Laravel developership. So what I would like for us to do is be the sort of space where, and I think I've mentioned a couple times, where we are taking the responsibility to make it as easy as possible for more people to experience the life change that we have experienced through Laravel, right? I started this whole talk talking all about ways that our lives have been changed by Laravel. Laravel has been successful because our lives have been changed. And so I think it is now our responsibility to try and open that up to as many people as possible. I think there's a couple ways for that. I think one of them is the fact that we're very, very open to PHP developers, but almost none of our resources teach non-PHP developers how to use Laravel. So I think there's some opportunities for us there. And I also think that we can actually be doing some work to reach out and say, hey, other people, Laravel's not just good if you're already stuck in PHP. This is actually the best space. We think this is the best space, and we want you all to come join us. So I have two things I want to introduce. They're not massive product announcements like Taylor and Caleb, but I think they're also really exciting because I think they're part of the future of the next 8 and the next 25 years for us. So the first one is called Onramp. Note with Onramp. So if you go to Onramp, oh, I meant to put the logo in here. Naomi did a beautiful logo, and I forgot to put it in the slide. If you go to onramp.dev, right now it's just bullet point list with some links. The idea behind this is it's going to be a Titan-sponsored, community-contributed tool that you can use to help someone coming out of one of two spaces. One, brand new developer, or two, just graduated from like a front-end based boot camp, and to give them the steps and the resources they need for free to go from there to being a fully fledged, ready to employ Laravel programmer by the end of this thing. Now, right now it's just a bullet point list of content. You should learn about the terminal. You should learn about this. That screenshot's old. It's better than that right now, but it's still relatively simple. Because what I want us all to do, especially those of you who have just started writing Laravel, or who have hired people who've just started in Laravel, to help me make sure that we're doing a really good job of encompassing what is necessary there. But the goal is, once we feel confident about the content we have in there, to give these developers a space to log in, check off the things as they do them, take a little test at the end. This is not a certification, but to prove to themselves that they know this thing to the level that they feel comfortable getting a job. And for someone to walk through this and by the end of this say, I believe that at least Matt Stauffer and Titan think that I have what it takes to become a Laravel developer here. Now, granted, Laracast is wonderful, but if you've ever thrown a brand new developer at Laracast, you've seen that deer in the headlights look in their eyes. So this right now already links to a whole bunch of Laracast videos, but it also links to other stuff, and it does it in a very particular order. I want your help, right? It's my idea, Titan is sponsoring it, but I don't want this to be just a Titan thing. I would love for us all to contribute to making this be the space where when you meet someone, they say, oh yeah, I really want to code, or yeah, I just graduated from this front-end boot camp and I'm a great React developer, but I can't do front-end, or I can't do back-end, and I can't find any jobs because they all want full-stack developers. You say, I got a thing. And all you got to do is just work through this thing, and I'll work through it with you. I'll meet you at a coffee shop every week, and we'll grab one of the items off the list every week, and we'll watch the video together or something like that. And this can be a tool that can allow us to be the space to bring more people to experience the same life transformation that we've experienced. So that's the first one. Thank you. So that is Onramp.dev, and it's an open source Laravel app. So if you just go to Onramp.dev, there's a button there that takes you up to the repo, and you can do pull requests and issues today. And I would really love for you to consider doing that, or maybe after the after party or this weekend or something like that. I would love for other people to be a part of making this great. And the other thing, and the last thing is Laravel Podcast Season 4 is coming. It has been coming for the last year as I've thought through this. And so some people were like, well, okay, why are you not doing something? It's because I've known that we need this, but I haven't known exactly how to do it. So Onramp and Laravel Podcast Season 4 are going to go hand in hand. In every episode of Laravel Podcast Season 4, we'll talk about one of the topics on Onramp, very technically, very practically, and I'm going to invite somebody from the community to help me talk, to teach new people, and hopefully all of us will learn a little bit of something as well, right? It's not just going to be for brand new people, to learn about one topic. So for all of you who said enough interviews talk about technical stuff, you're going to get what you want. For all of you who want to learn something new, you're going to get what you want. For all of you who've wanted your chance to break through, there's a lot of topics on Onramp, which means I'm going to need a lot of speakers, which means I'm not just going to be able to reach to the same people that have been on stage, which means I'm going to need a lot of you to be the people I'm talking with, even if you don't have a big name, even if you're not a conference speaker. So this is an opportunity for us together, between Onramp and Laravel Podcast Season 4, to become the most welcoming and inclusive place that has so many people being invited in and having the opportunity to experience the same life transformation that we experienced. So I hope that you all love it. I'm late on time, so I'm just going to end it now, and thank you all very much.